Let's take a look at the float function. Floating is the ability to move forward or backward through a design so that we can repair a mistake within the design. If we take a good look at this control panel, the area of the design that you see filled in color are the areas that have finished sewing. You will notice this yellow section down here, which is the chest of this bird, is completely filled in, indicating that it has been sewn. If we take a look at the actual design, we will clearly see that there's an area of this design that has been missed right in here. There are a couple reasons why something like that could happen. One reason would be, as we're sewing, sometimes the thread will actually start to shred behind the needle. Therefore, it will continue to sew, but you're not sewing at the full thread thickness, so that area is going to look very thin and sparse. We would need to go back over that area. Another reason might be you were sewing and perhaps the phone started ringing as you were backing up to fix a thread break, and you thought you backed up far enough, but you in fact hadn't backed up enough, and you hit the start button and ran away to answer the phone. When you came back, you realized you didn't back up far enough, so there's a missed area. Well, in any of those situations, we need to go back over that area and fix it. Let's take a look at the steps involved. The first thing we're going to do, since there is a thread still in the sewing field because we just stopped the machine, we need to trim that. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our tools, go into our manual trim, and trim it. Now that that thread has been trimmed, we're going to note the stitch that we're currently on. And in this case, we're on stitch number 5600. So I'm going to document that. Now, I wouldn't normally document that on the actual piece that I'm sewing, but for the sake of this training video, we've lifted the light up out of the way, and I'm going to actually write that number right on the backing so you can see it, 5600. That's the stitch that we're leaving off at. Now I'm going to go into the float function, and there are several different ways we can float. We can press F6, which puts me in stitch, and I can actually float to a specific stitch number. I can also float forward or backward by 1 stitch, 100, 1,000, 10,000, or I can float forward or backward by color. In this case, I believe I'm a few hundred stitches away, so I'm going to use the arrow keys to get to -100. You'll notice I used the down arrow. I could have also have used the up arrow. For this function, the left and right arrows do not work. So if you're on +1 and you go to and you want to go to -1, you can't use the left and right arrows. You still need to use up and down to walk all the way through. So now that we're on -100, every time I hit the set key, it's going to back up 100 stitches. So I know I need to get to somewhere about here in the design. So I'm going to watch the display here until I get my cursor to approximately that point. That didn't get me there. We're still not there. And that looks like it's probably pretty close. Now, the machine was just sewing black, which is needle 5. So I'm going to take needle 5 now, and I am going to, from the thread guide, lock it down, because that's the needle that's in the sewing position, and I'm going to raise this hoop slightly, and I want the needle to be about 2 needle widths into the sewn area. This area here is sewing from left to right, so I want to be on the left-hand side of this. and I'm not quite there. I'm actually about, I'm going to say probably about 10 or 15 stitches into that missed area. So now I'm going to go back to the control panel, and now I'm going to go up to -1, and I'm going to hit the set button about 15 times to go back about 15 stitches. And check it again. And now, as I look carefully at that needle, I can see it's into the sewn area slightly. That's where we want to start. So now I'm going to hit Escape on the control panel. That gets me out of the float function. And I'm going to hit Start. Now, before I hit Start, I just want to explain, we're going to let that area fill in with stitches. As soon as I see absolutely no more white showing, I'm going to let the machine make 2 more passes, and then I'm going to stop. So let's hit Start. We can see the area is being filled in now. Now there's no more white, and I let the machine make 2 more passes. Now I'm going to trim that thread. I'm going to go back into my tools and go back to my manual trim function. And I don't need to float forward to get to where we left off. All I need to do now is type in this number when I'm in the float function, but I'm going to subtract 10 from that. So instead of going to 5,600, I'm going to go to 5,590. So now we come back to the control panel, we hit Float, we go to Stitch, and we type in 5,590, set. That brings us right to where we left off. Now I hit Escape to come out. Now I notice the black thread has come loose, and that's the one it's going to start sewing. So I'm going to just fix that. We'll just pull it back up into the spring, and now when I press Start, you will see it starts right back where I left off, and I have just repaired that design.